And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to another victorious edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Kennesaw State. Two nights ago, your Indiana Hoosiers go on to defeat Kennesaw State 100-87, taking the record to 10-3 in the season, 2-0 still in the Big Ten. The final non-conference game of the season. Final of those tune-up games that IU gets for the non-conference, the easy ones. Now it's into Big Ten play, and oh boy, do I slightly not feel like this team has done enough tuning up. We're going to have to do a little bit of that on the fly as we go in the Big Ten, but this game felt a little weird, and it was, I will say, great to be in attendance on this game. Great to have the opportunity to connect with Martha. Great opportunity to see a few of you out there and everything. Thank you to those that said hey and everything to me while I was out and about in town. Great to go to Nick's, grab a drink, head on over to Buffalo Louie, see some high school friends, grab some wings, get off to the game and everything. Just great to be in Assembly Hall. And overall, I will say, for a holiday game and a game where students weren't there, just a very full arena and a very throaty arena when we needed to be, especially in the second half when there was a little bit of struggles and we didn't necessarily enjoy what the officials were giving us in that little stretch. You can hear it a little bit even in my throat getting over a cold. And as I hollered at the officials myself, I tried to be good, but hey, passion takes over when you're in the hall. But this game did feel a little weird. Two starters out, but we had a good start again. I do like the starts that IU is getting off to recently offensively. Mackenzie really kind of being the spark plug for that, hitting 3 threes in the first three of IU's 4 possessions was really great to see. Just a really good start, really good pace, good ball movement and everything from IU on the offensive side, and led to slightly a little bit of fall off at the end of the first half with only a 4-point lead into the half, and just a weird lull in the second half. Brought Kennesaw State back, just a lack of defense. The defense continues to be kind of a question mark for this team and a struggle for them. With a run, IU end up being down 4, but Indiana finally turns it on. I think Leal came in at that point, was kind of a good settling structure for IU. And as Martha and I talked about in person, it was kind of a shock. And a few other people, actually, even that I talked to, I was down 4. I was kind of engulfed into the game, didn't look at the score, and suddenly looked up, and IU was back up 12. So IU did good things in that stretch to fight back and get the game underhand and finish off with the W and finish off in good fashion and a game that will help the net overall a little bit better. Had we not had that lull and been able to stretch it out a little bit more and limit the offense from the other team, might have been even better as far as stat-wise for IU, but that is what we ended up with in this game. Thanks for being here with us. My name is Chad Schwarzkopf. Here with me always is Martha, the mop lady. Martha, give me your opening thoughts on this game.
Well, the opening thoughts, obviously, it was this is a game I always look forward to. You know, my family kind of has the tradition of finding a game over Christmas break, over the holiday break, to get down to, as you mentioned, no students, a little bit easier to get larger groups into. And I went down with not only my child, but a couple other families and friends. And you know, we were able to spend some time in Bloomington, spend some time in Assembly Hall. It was a ton of fun. So I always have this one circled on, you know, on my calendar. And then, of course, getting to connect with you at the game. I hadn't seen you in person, I think, since the Assembly Call event a couple years ago. So always good to be able to connect with you in person. Glad we got to spend some time, get our photo, which I'm glad you tweeted out. That was wonderful. Gave me a good laugh. But all that, you know, that was the good, and the game was good too. I mean, it was obviously knowing what, you know, I went to the Kennesaw State game last year, and I think they returned 4 starters from last year's tournament team. They do have a new coach, Antoine Petaway from Alabama. But when I saw, you know, just looking into them a little bit and knowing how many 3-pointers they shoot and, you know, the style they play, and then you think about us being without 2 starters, and it's like, man, this has the recipe for one of those pull your teeth out game, pull your hair out game. Like it's going to take some good execution, some good defensive play, And some things that Indiana hasn't shown the ability to be very consistent with here early in the season. So had this feeling that it had every opportunity to be kind of a grinder, and it was. At the end of the day, thankfully Indiana found a way, and I think you hit the nail on the head too. It's these crowds are always fun because, again, I think I knew a lot of people coming down from the northern part of the state. It's just one of those games where people take advantage of everybody being in town, kids being out of school. We're going to get to, and I think you see that come through as even though the students are gone, it's still a pretty rowdy atmosphere, which makes it fun. So, the game itself, we're going to get into that. It's certainly, still a lot of questions, still I think some concern. Found a way, with some really, really solid play by a specific individual, and I think the officiating was what it was, but I think at the end of the day, zero bad losses for Indiana heading into, the easy part of the schedule is over. It's Big Ten play now. So it's the good side is, obviously no bad losses. The bad side is we've got a lot of opportunities. And if we don't shore them up, there's going to be some times we may get punched in the face come conference season. So it's 9-3. You look at it on paper, good record. So we'll see kind of how you respond coming out of the holidays.
Yeah, I like what you said there with no bad losses, because a lot of other teams this year are not so lucky. There were a lot of lower level teams, lower conference teams, Sun Belt type teams that came into a few big name schools and had some upsets this year. And so nice of IU to be able to escape that. Obviously, we came into the season with so many question marks and stuff for this team. And while we didn't necessarily figure them all out, we at least did not let them be the detriment to a record or a blood stain on our record and our resume for the year. So at least we can say that. We can hang our hat on that for the year. But before we start talking about individual players, the one thing that did definitely struggle in this game that I want to talk on a little bit is that defense. Continues to be kind of confounding for this team. Gave up 1.13 points to Kennesaw State, allowing them to take 35 threes. Like you said, they're a known team that's going to take them and can make them. But we allowed them to take a lot more than we necessarily should have. Runs are going to happen, obviously, during games, but you can't go down 4 to a Kennesaw State type of thing. And I think it's, again, over to that over helping that IU is doing on those assignments, on that nail slot rim assignment, just trying to come over and be able to dig and limit guys, and just ball watching too much, getting just a step or two away and then having to recover, and then we're out of rotation and we're struggling there. There's also a few miscues I've seen on defense with talking on switches and fighting through some of those screens. And it's tough to find where the solution is or where the problem is. And IU's had some games this year. I forget which game exactly it was that we did do that zone switch, but that's going to be something that I think IU's going to have to look at doing possibly more. And I'm amazed they didn't do it in this game to try to limit those 3-point shots from Kennesaw State. But it may just be a product right now of what IU is putting out there. Obviously, I believe the type of defense that Woodson wants to play is more inept for the longer length, more athletic guys. And I think that where we lack that is obviously in the guard spot right now with Trey Galloway and Cups playing. If we had X, that would solve a little bit of that. He's a little bit better within that realm. And you can kind of see it, I guess, with like Ja'Kai Newton. Obviously, he's out, but he's an athletic guy. He's a little bit longer and everything. So I think a little bit of personnel is the struggle for that. But something that IU has done better in other games, and they're going to need to shore up. Your kind of thoughts on what's going on with the defense?
Yeah, I think when you heard, it was interesting, right? When I heard Ware was going to be out with COVID, my initial thought was like here's the opportunity to move, to come out and not necessarily start two bigs, moving Baco down to the 4 and slide someone in to the 3 spot and not necessarily have to begin the game with two bigs, and then Coach they decided to start Peyton Sparks, which was interesting to me, and it's fine, right? I thought Peyton came out and played, really put together a pretty solid performance. But going against a team that you knew was going to be perimeter oriented and shot, it seemed at least half their shots from 3-point range. It felt like just a good opportunity for IU to come out, and maybe go a little bit smaller to try to combat some of that. And you touched on their defensive philosophy of playing that nail slot rim style, and I see it taught a lot. And I don't mean anything callous by this or joking, but you see this. I see it taught a lot at the youth level because you're not surrounded by teams that can shoot really well yet. At the younger levels, teams are driving the basketball, trying to get to the hole, and that style of defense really prevents dribble drives. You're in passing lanes, you're in driving lanes, you're sagging back on the backside. But when you play against teams that can swing the basketball, you're really left a little bit at a disadvantage on that backside if you don't have guys that can rotate fast. And that really seems like Indiana's problem is, we think about defense and we see these open shots and we're like, man, these guys are no good at defense. Well, a lot of it is the style of defense they play. They're sagging back on the backside because they're trying to prevent, for all the talk and all the the bad discussion we had about Archie Miller's pack line defense. This isn't all that different really in terms of kind of setting up to be at a disadvantage when the ball is rotated well against good teams that can pass and shoot the three. It's kind of the same thing on that backside, and it really leaves kind of, I think, our guys, because I don't think they're great at getting back out on that perimeter and playing, being responsive as far as that concerned. It leaves us at a disadvantage. And I think you saw that a little bit, and especially when we're going with two bigs and things like that. So it's just interesting that we haven't really changed our defensive philosophy to, you mentioned personnel and kind of being at a disadvantage. I think there's a lot of truth there. It's we're not really changing our approach with the personnel we have, and I think at times that leaves us at a disadvantage, especially against teams. I mean, we gave up 83 points to Kennesaw State. That's a little bit of concern there, especially as you get into Big Ten play. I think just a real. Sometimes I refer to it as a stubbornness, right? It seems like there's just a really lack of difference in approach when there's personnel issues or guys out or teams that we're facing that, shoot the three. It's just we're staying status quo, and to me that comes off as stubborn. So, just hope that we can get better at what we do, and especially against teams that can shoot. And hopefully at some point we see maybe a different philosophy defensively. We saw a 2-3 zone at one time, but it just seems like there needs to be a little bit more adjustment based off the teams we're playing and the personnel we have.
Yeah, and it's where it concerns me the most is that if I'm an opposing coach, I know exactly there's so much tape out on it, and there's so many avenues that they can exploit IU's defense right now. And any good coach in the Big Ten is already looking at that tape. Nebraska right now looking at that tape and seeing how they can drive and kick and get IU out of rotation, and they're just going to be licking their chops because it's easy to game plan against what IU is giving you right now. So, not to say that they can't get better, just a little ratchet up and a little bit more intensity on defense goes a long way. And we saw that at about the 10-minute mark when they finally kind of locked in. And I think maybe that was a little bit of themselves waking up, a little bit of, I think, Anthony Leal kind of came in as that coach player on the court and maybe was talking a little bit more and got things a little bit better. We also kind of got their best player and best shooter in a little bit of foul trouble. So that helped as well. But it is definitely something that needs to improve player-wise and, like you said, coach-wise. A little bit of ego checking and realization that things aren't working and maybe change a few looks here and there. Getting into players, obviously, first off, we have to talk about Malik and his career point night at 34 points. Everyone was very throaty for him and very excited cheering for him when he got his final points and took his curtain call. He made one 3-pointer, like his free throw line this time too. Made 7 of 11 from free throws, 11 rebounds too. That was what was really good to see, him getting really engaged on the board in this game. I liked a lot. Only 1 foul. That's another thing that's great. I mean, that might be the barometer that we can use for Malik, because it'd be interesting for me to look back in games where he scores a lot. What are his personal fouls going in? Obviously, the only slight blemish on his stat sheet being the 5 turnovers, but I like how free he's feeling and easily stepping up, and is now hands down IU's best player. And I think he's found that next level of confidence in his game, being out there and what he can do with the ball. He still struggles, I think, a little bit with passing it out when he gets double teamed. I think that's the reason, obviously, for those 5 turnovers. But there's a confidence that we've seen from him, and I think we've kind of know now, after hearing that press conference a game or two ago, where he made that comment that he's been working with Calbert a lot more, and love that, obviously, bringing him on staff, because it's already showing dividends with Malik finding his game and everything. Your thoughts on Malik and the way he's headed?
Yeah, real stud performance, right? I think, especially when you think about Khalil being out, and I think in a sense that freed Malik up a little bit down low. It just seemed like a night he could get whatever he wanted, and at times it's like, okay, let's work it through him a little bit more. I think he easily could have went off for 40, but on the court for 37 minutes, a performance we needed, right? Undermanned a little bit in terms of being out with 2 starters. So just a guy, I think that, when you think about it, and he made some of the comments, which is, it's great marketing material after the game, just, talking about, his time and looking at what's gone on with Trace and his progression in the NBA. He's like, it's next man up, and it's my time. And what a great attitude. Just seems like he's a guy that every time we see him, he's got a smile on his face, and just a guy that I think comes in, works hard, wants to get better, and has gotten better. You look at the jump from his freshman to his sophomore season, and I think the good news is that I don't know. He's one of those guys that you kind of wonder how his game translates to the NBA, and does it translate to the NBA? Right, a big that when he is making all those threes, I'm like, slow down now. We don't want too much tape on you making threes. You're gonna end up on some draft boards. I want you around for a little while. But no, he's a guy that projects, I think, for all intents and purposes, to be in college for 3 or 4 years, which is great, especially when you think about the jump he's already made from a freshman to a sophomore year. And then, you think about him being around for potentially a couple more years. He got the opportunity to go down as one of the better big mans that have ever played at IU. So really, really excited about the way he continues to trend up. He had a couple bumps in the road where he got into some foul trouble and didn't stay on the court as long, but to come back when we needed him, being undermanned a little bit, tremendous, right? And just some confidence I think he's going to need going into because we know what Big Ten season brings. He's going to get banged around a little bit, and defenses get a little bit more aggressive and things like that. But just a guy that had a tremendous performance, and it was great to see him gain that confidence and really step up with Khalil being out.
Yep. Next person, obviously, that was a kickstarter to IU's offense and has been recently. With a clear, it's been clear in the last couple of games that IU likes to go to him first in the games. A lot of plays called for the first possession tends to go to him. Was Mackenzie Mbako. Really thought he had a good game in the limited minutes that he got. Only 14 minutes for him, but scored 14 points, 5 for 7 from the field, 4 for 5 from 3. Was just hitting them perfectly. Didn't make it to the line. 6 rebounds, which was great to see him a little bit more active on the defensive side. But again, 14 minutes. And it was interesting in the live action of the game, there was moments where I wanted him back in when IU was struggling, sat for a lot of the first half, sat a good deal in the second half when IU was struggling. Some of that might have been because of him getting a little bit roasted on defense, being part of that struggle in those rotations and helping too much. But now in hindsight, looking at it, seeing as productive as he was in those limited minutes is great, because we didn't necessarily need him. We still got that win, and we were able to save his legs a little bit, because he's someone that's going to be needed as the Big Ten season goes on and as he continues to move upward. But again, another game where you rewind a couple weeks and we were hoping to see him get going and hoping when is he going to find his upside. And I think he's finally getting there, and he's hitting these shots well. He's finding them in rotation. He's not forcing anything. So a good game from him overall. What were your thoughts on Malik? Or excuse me, Mackenzie.
Yeah, Mackenzie. Yep, I know what you meant. Yeah, just I think all the excitement for the way he came out and knocking those 3 threes down in a row, and it's everything kind of everything we kind of expected and have certainly seen in nuggets with him, just his ability to pop off like that a little bit. I too question it was in the moment, like why especially when we needed some points, why is he not on the court? I did read that maybe he banged up his wrist a little bit, but it was interesting that he especially with as hot as he was to start the game, why he didn't get more minutes. I think he ended up playing 14, 15 minutes, something like that. So which
14,
was a little bit of a surprise to me. Yeah. So especially in the second half, just not a whole lot of time out there. But again, I don't know if Coach was asked after the game the why behind that, but I think I did read a little bit that he was banged up, but also, he still does have those moments where he's out of position defensively. So maybe like you said, maybe that was part of it as well. I did see Woody getting on him a little bit, during some of those out of position defensive breakdowns. So, yeah, I think if anything, to be able to score 14 points in 14 minutes kind of speaks for itself, right? I think if you can put up those kind of stats, it's what can you do with 30 minutes, right? So he figures it out defensively and keeps getting better there. I think obviously his ceiling gets a lot higher. We need a scorer like that on the court, especially as we continue to go through some of these injury situations with being, again, where we were without 2 starters, and so we need those guys to step up. So just want to find a way for him. It just felt like limited action, and for a guy that came out and knocked down his first 3 3-pointers, it was like, why is he only seeing limited action? So try to figure that out, and maybe get a little bit better defensively, and figure out a way to stay on the court just a little bit more. And I think it makes IU a little bit scary.
Well, and then there are going to be points in the season, I believe, with him where his lack of defense is going to have to be overlooked because of his offense outweighing that situation. So not necessarily thinking that Coach has that same mentality, obviously being so defensive minded. But that is going to be a factor for him. A new starter in the lineup, again, through slight bit of injuries. We've had a few fresh starters that we wouldn't expect this year already, but a brand new person to start in the starting lineup this past game was Peyton Sparks. And he has struggled throughout the year. I think he's kind of looked a little discombobulated, a little out of control in other games where we've seen him, other minutes we've seen him come in on, and I didn't see that in this game for him. His first start going for 10 points was perfect from the field, perfect 4 for 4 from the field. Missed 2 of his free throws. Obviously, he's not the greatest at the free throws. If you rewind back to a show, I think pitched maybe he shoots it granny style at one point. Might be a little bit better, but 8 rebounds from him. Just thought he played a good game just within himself and brought that emotion. He had that great tip back dunk at one point where he was really animated, really got the crowd going and everything. And is someone that's going to show that emotion and that effort, while it might be a little crazy at some points. I thought he played hard and he played within himself in this game. Your thoughts on Sparks on his first start?
Yeah, I was surprised he started. Maybe not surprised. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I was more like in disappointed. It's not even remotely the right word. I thought it was a great opportunity, like I mentioned earlier, to come out maybe a little bit smaller. But I really love I really love the attitude he plays with, right? I think he's never going to be a guy that's going to go out and just, pack the box score full of stats across the board. But he's always going to contribute, and the way he contributes is just, obviously you look at he looks like a defensive tackle out there. He's just a big, broad guy that I think can disrupt that way with his aggression and attitude and all those little things that matter. And that's what he brought, right? And you look at the production he did give us, 4 for 4 from the field, and to put up 10 points. I think that if you get that from Peyton Sparks, I think that's a really, really strong night from him. And I did like the energy he brought, right? I think we've talked a lot about sometimes this team lacking any sort of emotion out on the court. It's different with him, right? I think you mentioned the play where I think he had that put back and got in some guy's face from Kennesaw, to the point where I was like, man, you better tone that back a little bit. They even cut the replay off short, not to show it again. But he was fired up, which was great to see. So I like the fact it almost felt a little bit earned in my mind, the chance for him to get the start. It was cool to see Indiana kid get a start due to Khalil's injury. So yeah, I thought he came in and played some really, really strong minutes again. 2 starters that only played 14, 15 minutes. So we did need to rely on some guys off the bench. So it was nice to see. But I thought, I really thought that Peyton came in and gave us a strong start and contributed where he needed to contribute. So that was good to see.
Well, and like you allude to there, I think we all kind of thought that with Ware being out, that we would see Malik slide to the 5 position, and that we were going to see Anthony Walker in the starting lineup. And that was definitely a lineup that I was expecting to see. And we did see a lot more with Walker, and then when 29 minutes, 10 points for him. Not the large production that we've seen. And overall, when I kind of think back on the game, wasn't really that big statement of a game. There weren't those big moments from him. And that was kind of really when I did see Walker was going to be out, I was excited to see that lineup of Malik and Walker in a little bit more, because Walker is able to step out, give Malik the room to perform. And maybe that is where I didn't notice him contributing, but where he quietly contributed, just staying out of Malik's way, allowing him to be in the right positions, get going. But Walker continues to kind of be my favorite guy off the bench. His veteran attitude, what he's able to deliver for this team is something very good. And just, again, a quiet game for him in 29 minutes to only end up with 10 points, but just kind of playing the role that he needed to and be complimentary to Malik. Your kind of thoughts at all on Walker?
I really like his veteran approach. He did come in, and I saw Woody get on him a little bit. He had 2 or 3 turnovers in a span of about 5 minutes that I think were a little bit, uncharacteristic of him, just kind of trying to force some things. But got kind of over that quickly, right? And still was able to be on the court for 29 minutes and just kind of that steady hand, that steady veteran. Again, we've talked a lot about what he brings to the table in terms of being around a lot of basketball and, played at Miami for a few years, was a starter there at one point. So he's seen, this isn't new to him. So when we are lacking some starters, it's nice to have a guy with that, with that veteran experience to be able to rely on. I think he's really, he had some rough bumps early in the season where he had some performances that were kind of head scratchers, but I think he's gotten over that hump, and I can't remember the opponent that he essentially carried us to victory. We don't win without him, but that's really become the norm from him. That steady hand, that steady contributor, that steady veteran leadership. So, and Friday night was a perfect example of us needing him and him coming in, playing 30 minutes and putting together a nice game. So it's really nice to have a guy like that to lean on, especially when we're shorthanded and need somebody to come in and provide that leadership. Yes,
100%. He's definitely going to be that guy that we're going to rely on come to the end of the season. That veteran attitude, that mentality, that experience is definitely something that IU lacks in some points, and is a good contribution to have, especially coming off the bench with a basketball IQ like that. Something that I've said a lot about Trey Galloway in the past when he was kind of the sixth man for IU, having someone that comes off the bench that knows a lot about the game and has seen a lot of the game, can be there in the first couple minutes on the bench watching, just seeing how they can contribute. And then once they get in there, know what to do, what needs to happen to either get his players going or where there might be holes in the opponent that they can exploit. So I do like having that mentality. And that was a great pickup, obviously, in the portal by IU. The guards for IU, I think, had a pretty quiet game. Gabe, not his best game. Didn't play too many minutes. 26 though, honestly, when I look back at it. But Trey as well, I think, had a very quiet 14 in my mentality and my memory of this game. Didn't really recognize him going off like he normally would, but was great to see at least that 3 go down for him. Assembly Hall and myself included got well throated when he hit that shot, because we want to have all sorts of confidence for him if any of those 3 pointers go down for him. Your thoughts on IU's guards in this game?
I thought overall, I mean, Trey, I mean, he's again, I just feel like he's pulled in so many different directions. He's a guy that at times is going off for, at his game against Kansas, where he almost scored 30 to this game, and you see him with 7 assists, which I think is great. But he's not making necessarily that impact scoring wise, but he's making impact in other places, right? I think he did a great job of getting the ball down to Malik, the hot hand, and I think Gabe again, I go back to him just being a freshman, and I think what I saw from both Gabe and CJ was really a struggle on the defensive end. And I thought Kennesaw State did a great job at exploiting that. I'll call it mismatches, because they've got some veteran guys on the perimeter that really took it to Gabe and CJ, and they kind of had their way with them, quite honestly. Kennesaw also did a good job of switching and getting mismatches early on in the possession to get big guys guarding their guards. And, Indiana just didn't do a great job of recovering from any of that. And I thought CJ and Gabe were both victims of that. I thought they really, both of those guys really struggled defensively, which is why you saw Indiana turn to Anthony Leal and go to him, because they needed somebody to come in and kind of, be an answer defensively. And I thought it was great to see, Woody mentioned it after the game that Anthony deserved it, and he did. And he came in and he provided, to get 13 minutes from Anthony. And I thought most of it was needed on the defensive end, because those two guys really struggled. I'm not sure what the future holds for CJ. He just seems like a guy with not a lot of confidence, and if one thing doesn't go right early on in him playing, it just seems like it's all downhill from there. So kid that's got to find it. But yeah, I think obviously a ton of opportunity on the perimeter still. Hopefully X is back soon to steady some things out. But overall, not a great performance by our perimeter guys. But again, I think seeing a guy like Anthony come in and get his was great to see, especially when we needed it.
Yeah, CJ continues to be that source of frustration for me. I still have hopes that he's going to get going. He's just kind of that kind of loaded gun for IU, I would say. Just kind of sitting there ready to go off. He has it in him. It's in his game, but it's just I don't know. I don't know, and I think it's got the coaching staff confused as well and struggling as well. It's akin to, and it's bad to say because it may lead to losing him in the offseason, but it's very much akin to what we saw last year from Tamar. Just struggling to find their game and just find their place and everything. And I know the coaching staff, and maybe he needs, if he's not talking to Calbert, go over talk to Calbert some more, because that's working for Malik, or maybe he is. I don't know. It's frustrating. I hope the best for him, and I want him to find that, because if he does, that's such a great guard and a great firecracker coming off the bench for IU, because he does have those moments, especially on defense, where he's great at finding the passing lane and getting steals. It credits him in the box score for only 1 steal, but I felt like he had 2, or at least he had maybe it was a deflection that was almost a steal that I'm thinking about in my head. But I don't know. I don't know. He's that conundrum. But I do like what you said about Anthony Leal, and I think he is someone that if we do continue to not have X out there for us, we will maybe see continued minutes for him, because if Gabe is struggling a little bit on the defensive side, Gabe doesn't bring us a lot of offense. So we need someone to come in that can steady things and be that coach and that great IQ person that Anthony can be on the court and come in. And he's proven to be that, because he doesn't need to be that offensive scorer. He can just be a distributor. And he still did get his own in a great fast break. He made that layup, but came in and produced the minutes that IU needed to see. So looking at some stats in this game, obviously the best stat for me in this game is 7 for 15 from 3. IU finished 46.7% from 3-point line. That's great. That's great for this team. I think that's a higher or above average goal that we need to have for this team. Obviously, we can go a little bit higher than that. We can make it a little bit better in games. But if that can kind of be the norm for this team, that's great. That's a great, hopefully sustainable thing for IU moving forward. Obviously, a little bit on the disappointment side on this game is 18 turnovers. Was a little bit, but we did get 52 points in the paint. Fouls were under control a little bit. No one really in foul trouble. McKenzie kind of got it at the back end and everything. Well-distributed points as well. That was what was great to see. Almost all of IU's players in double digits that played minutes. Just 3 guys that played didn't get double digits. What are some stats that you see that stand out in this game?
Yeah, I obviously when you look at Kennesaw, and we knew they were going to shoot the 3-pointer, but 71 field goal attempts, 35 of them were from the 3-point land, which is just absurd. And they made them at almost a 50% rate, which is you think about that, and it's like, man, that's concerning, and on paper that it was no surprise they're going to come in and shoot that many threes, but it just goes back to what we've already talked about was the defensive approach. So not being able to disrupt them from a 3-point perspective is still a little bit concerning, but obviously the other stats that matter are just our ability to kind of combat that with controlling the paint, controlling the fouls, right? I mean, you shoot that many threes, you're not going to go to the free throw line all that much, and we play the way we do and get the ball down low and play at the post we should, and we did, which obviously is tremendous, and for us to do, I think, for all intents and purposes, shoot 63% from the free throw line. That feels like 85% for us.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was still a lot of growing. We missed a lot of front ends. I still think we should be better from the free throw line, control our own destiny a little bit. So, yeah, I think, but our ability to kind of combat what they presented from a 3-point range with playing through the paint and getting to the free throw line was good to see. I think our bench points were pretty similar to theirs, but they've got a veteran team, so not too concerned about that. But I think overall just ability to kind of combat what they presented with what we do well. So good stuff there.
Yeah, another stat line as I was digging that was nice to see. 20 points, second chance points. A little bit better rebounding, obviously, as well, too, for IU. 43 rebounds. That's going to happen when we're just kind of outmatching a team down below like we were for IU. 11 offensive rebounds. That's great to see as well. Opponent turnovers, 15 points off of turnovers, 13. That was good to see overall. But again, a good stat sheet and everything. And like you said, made threes by them and everything. That's a scary point when IU's offense doesn't click like it did in this game. But something that needs to be shored up moving forward. kind of wrapping some things up. And before we do that, we're getting into obviously Big Ten season and everything. Hot tickets, hot times to get to IU games. And if you find yourself not able to get to those Big Ten games, there's something you can do with those tickets. Martha, tell them about that.
Yes, and I just one comment. I think just because Greg makes a good point in the comments about Kennesaw State switching over to a zone. There was a time, and I can't remember when exactly they switched over to that zone, but there was a time in the second half, and I can't remember if you and I talked about it with somebody, but IU was down 4, and all of a sudden you looked up and they were back up by 12 or 13, and it felt like in a span of 2 or 3 minutes. And I went from concern to feeling like Indiana was back in complete control. And I don't know if that was at the time they switched the zone or when Kennesaw switched the zone, but not necessarily a stat that jumped out to me, but certainly a time frame within that game that I think something really switched, where I went from being concerned under 10 minutes that I'm not sure we're going to win this basketball game at this rate to being in complete control in what felt like in real time a matter of 4 or 5 minutes. So that was you and I had a completely other random person that I was talking to that we had that same sentiment. It was almost like I blipped or time jumped. But yeah, we were down 4 and I look up and suddenly we're up 12. I was like, uh-oh, did we bump something on the scoreboard? It's honestly what it felt like. It was wild. I mean, I was talking to my daughter about it. I'm like, weren't we just down 4? And I blinked and we're up 12. So that was a wild sequence for sure. But one that can feel free to happen a lot more often.
Yes.
I loved it. But yeah, thank you. It's obviously we're through kind of the holiday portion of the schedule, and we sent a lot of folks to the game through the Hoosier Ticket Project. We're getting into the Big Ten season, so there's not. We usually see our donations kind of tick down a little bit, which is completely understandable. A lot of these tickets are being used, but I would just remind folks that in the event they can't use their tickets, especially short notice, we can help find a good, solid home. But it feels like giving back. We can certainly do that. I just want to thank everybody for what they did donate through the holidays. We were able to send a lot of families to all the home games over the last couple of weeks. So huge thanks there. And if anybody's interested in making a donation moving forward, HoosierTicketProject.org, the donation tab up at the top is a good place to do that. That will walk you right through that. So again, thanks to everybody that made those donations over the last couple of weeks.
Great opportunity, great program, great organization for Hoosier Nation. And obviously, thank you to everyone that's involved with that takes care of these tickets, takes care of these Hoosiers, and are able to be there and see the magic that is Assembly Hall in person. So great to see. Give me your final thoughts on this game.
Yeah, again, Kennesaw State, I remember last season, we played Kennesaw without Trace. I'm not sure if you remember that game. And I want to say it was Tamar Bates that just had one of his holy cow moments that kind of carried us to victory. Kennesaw State was a different team last year, different coach. They were a tournament team, but they're always one of those opponents that I think are, especially with the veterans they return, they're going to be kind of we're going to have to play well, right? Especially being down 2 starters. I think to come out with a win and there were some moments of challenge that we were able to overcome. I think I'm really trying to look at this with glass half full, right? No bad losses. We were able to overcome, I think some challenges in the game. I think, but in the back of your head, you're like, why don't we adjust our approach a little bit to teams like this when our roster's missing some pieces? Why don't we change our approach? Maybe go small, change our defense to where we're guarding more, or it's more perimeter oriented. So I've got those questions, right? It's a real stubbornness I feel at times from Woody, that he's going to continue to run his stuff and try to run it well. I just think the times we run into problems is because we stay a little bit stubborn and we're out of position. So I'd love to see some change there. But again, I think where we're sitting at on paper, I think to start the season, somebody asks if you're okay being 9-3 going into the heart of Big Ten play. I think I think I'm okay with that. 2 losses would be, I think, great, right? With some of the teams we played, but yeah, I think all in all, this game specifically, being down 2 guys and coming out with the lineup we came out with, it was nice to see us overcome. It could have been a lot closer down the stretch. I'm glad it wasn't. I think when you look at all things considered, Malik having the game he did, gaining some momentum going into the season, getting a guy like Anthony Leal some time on the court. I think I'm going to try to look at that and hope that we can get healthy going into Big Ten play. X seems like he's close. Khalil should be over COVID quickly. So hopefully we get some fresh guys off the bench and are able to because Nebraska's not, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we're a road underdog against Nebraska. So we know what the Big Ten is going to bring us. So hopefully we get into a point where we get healthy and we're able to play a little bit better.
Yep. 10-3. Don't take away one of those wins.
My fault.
But hey, non-conference is over. Going into the season, obviously, we had high hopes for this team and where they could be. And we knew there was a high ceiling. We knew there was a low floor. And we got glimpses of that floor a little bit in the non-conference this year. And maybe a lot of those questions that we had didn't necessarily get answered. And I think a lot of that is due to some unluckiness in injuries and everything. A few guys have had to grow up a lot quicker than we would have wanted them to. But there are other answers, other questions that we got better answers to. One of a few that I come to mind immediately is Khalil Ware's motor. That was kind of the thought and the narrative, and we saw some good things from him at the beginning of the season. We're struggling a little bit as of recent, but he's gotten a lot better. Mackenzie, we knew that we would rely on him a lot, and he struggled a little bit to start this season, but is continuing a upward trajectory. And Malik making that sophomore year jump is just raining dividends right now for IU and continues to be that support person. And then we were curious about what the bench was going to be able to contribute for IU. While there are still some questions there, we at least know that we have a solid veteran person coming off the bench for IU in Anthony Walker. So while there is still some things to figure out, and there are still going to be a lot of things that rear their ugly heads going into this Big Ten season for this IU team, I do feel like we have found a team that can be, if they stay engaged, if they stay aggressive, can have some upsets, can do some good things on the road, can take care of business at home. But there's also going to be a team that's going to cause a lot of frustration for us again. And it's going to cause Martha and I to drag ourselves the next morning up to the microphones to sit here with you guys and talk about it, because it's going to be a struggle. There are going to be those times where we're frustrated. There are going to be those times where Twitter is just toxic as can be, and the Fire Woody chants are going to be out there strong. But there are going to be those times where we're excited, where we're feeling a little more hoarse in our voice, like I am after being in Assembly Hall, being excited about this team. And that's what's great about being a part of Hoosier Nation and being a Hoosier fan. And the Big Ten is a very interesting Big Ten this year. There are a few teams at the top. There aren't very many at the bottom. There is some heavy middle ground and some room for upsets and some room for some upsettedness. So I'm excited for it. I'll be here for it. IU starts it coming up on this Wednesday at Nebraska, an away game. It's a 9 p.m. game on BTN. Haven't gotten word yet if they're going to let Galen out of BTN Plus world to come and do a few games. It'd be interesting to have him and Robbie Hummel. Would love to hear those two on the call, but I don't think we'll get that. But that will do it for now on this edition of Hoosier Morning After. Thank you for being with us, guys. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you to Martha for being here with me. As always, you can follow Martha online at The Mop Lady. Follow me online at General Chadwick. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing the music you hear on the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're on the different podcast platforms, give a thumbs up, leave a review, all that kind of stuff. I appreciate it. That'll do it for this edition of Hoosier Morning After. We'll be there the morning after the next game. Until then, guys, go out there, have yourself a wonderful day. Happy New Year, and let's go Hoosiers.